It's 2024, and yet I still can't escape talking about my favorite little fascist boy, Matt Walsh. Hey there, interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, and today I want to talk about a little clip that went viral this past weekend from everyone's favorite Wolverine cosplayer and Daily Wire host, Matt Walsh, because I think despite it being somewhat funny to laugh at in terms of what Matt Walsh is saying here, I actually think there's some deeper things that we can talk about to get to Matt Walsh's hypocrisy and lack of understanding things like gender. I'll show you the whole clip in just a second, but to give context, Matt is talking about in this clip the idea of heterosexual men giving gifts to their wives or female partners outside of Valentine's Day.
But of course, 97% of us are buying the Valentine's Day gift on the way home from work on February 14th. But buying a Valentine's Day gift for your wife a month early is the gayest thing you could do. Don't do that, because if it's January 3rd and you tell your wife, I got you Valentine's Day gift already, she's going to say, so you're gay. Well, that kind of ruins Valentine's Day, doesn't it?
Okay, obviously on its face, this is the funniest thing I've seen this man say, and I've seen this man say some really fun, dumb shit amongst all the horrible, horrific, fascist nonsense that he says and transphobic bullshit, because he's saying it's the most gay thing ever to just care and buy something for your wife. And here I thought the most gay thing ever was like, you know, a dude getting fucked in the ass or sucking a dick. Sorry to be crass, but I feel like that's gayer than like buying chocolates for your wife, but who's to say? So like, obviously that's what made everyone laugh at him, and rightfully so. This man is a man who should be laughed at all the time, just everything. Like everything he says is laughable. The only thing that keeps us from laughing is just how horrible it is sometimes. But this one is just funny. But I was also fascinated by this statement from him because it really reveals how just flaccid that's the word I'll go with, his understanding of gender is, but how he constantly underscores the social nature of gender and sexuality. Without going all deep into theory, many of you probably have read or heard about Judith Butler's idea of the performative nature of gender. And when we say the performative nature of gender, it's not saying that, you know, gender itself is a performance, that we like sort of play out gender, though to a degree that is part of it. But what the performative nature of gender means is that we enact gender by our understandings of the roles by which it has to function within a society. So, for example, when we say that a husband and wife are married, like the actual marriage isn't something that physically exists in the world. It's not a thing that like came into magical being by God or whatever. But it's something that we make as humans real by performing and enacting the rules by which we all collectively believe it functions as. We believe marriage is a thing, and thus we create systems that sort of uphold marriage. We believe husband and wife. We sort of interact with people as husband and wife within a social context. Thus, we make it real by our all collective belief and playing out what marriage is. And this is how we get this idea of like trans people sort of having to deal with this sort of struggle to get people to understand our gender, because we understand our gender. We perform our gender in the way that we wish to be seen as, whether it be non-binary, whether it be more aligned with a more binary view of gender, whatever. But then there are others who do not join us in seeing our gender as real, and thus there becomes a disconnect in how we create that performative nature of gender, because not everyone's buying into it and enacting our gender as real. That's why there like so many trans people deal with mental health issues, because of like dealing with this mismatch in how we see ourselves and how the world sees us. But the idea of where these performances come from, the idea of what these roles are that we're supposed to play come from this long history of colonization, gender roles, racism, like all of this stuff that our society has built up that I've talked about even more so in my main videos. Like I've talked about the history of gender and colonialization, all that stuff in those videos over on that channel. So when Matt says that to give something to your wife outside of the pre-described capitalist holiday of when you're supposed to buy things for your wife is gay and is less manly, is making you less of a man, in a way, he is right. In the sense that there are these expectations that he, as like a fundamentalist Christian and a conservative fascist man, wants to uphold and is trying to force upon the world, that are built out of like this history of colonialization and trying to like uphold this very abhorrent imperial system of gender. And so when you don't prescribe to this, like, woman is object, woman is less than, woman doesn't deserve to be treated kindly outside of when it's being upholding, capitalism to buy things on Valentine's Day, in a way, that does make you less of a man. It does make you less straight, because you're not adhering to the role that straight men or manly men, like masculine dudes, are supposed to play. It's kind of the same thing that you'll often see when you look at like fascist rhetoric, and they will say things like, oh, they are making our men into women. Like, oh, our society is crumbling because men are turning into women. And, today what they'll often be referring to is like trans people. Pick whatever conspiracy theory, whether it be like Jewish people, big pharma, all conflates together, is like turning, men into women via trans women nowadays, and like ruining masculinity in our society. But it doesn't actually mean that literally when you hear that in a lot of fascist rhetoric when it comes to like talking about trans people. It's literally saying that men are becoming less manly because they don't enact this role that is basing out of like this colonizer history of manhood, of men needing to go out and like own property and control others and control others' land and things like that. This like idea of control and property and ownership, and colonialization and capitalism. So when fascists say men are becoming women, what they are actually saying is that people are not performing the performative role of man that colonizers collectively decided upon, and thus the role of man is changing to fit more how they conceptualize a woman to be, when in reality what we're all doing is changing the idea of these hierarchical structures of man and woman, and actually trying to create more egalitarian ways of viewing people and performing gender in that sense. And so when you hear this in fascist rhetoric of like, we're losing manhood, what they're saying is they're losing the idea of what manhood should be, because this idea of manhood comes out of these hierarchical assumptions and setups that we all put into performing as part of our society. So really, here in Matt Walsh's brief statement about men not giving a shit about women outside of Valentine's Day, or even then just still viewing this property because you're buying shit for them, so capitalism more is what it's about, he is ultimately revealing the artificial nature of gender, and how gender is just a social function and a very performative thing. So what I'm saying is, the man who constantly rants about trans people not being their real gender ultimately constantly reveals how gender is really a made-up thing that we just pretend all exists, at least in terms of the nature of how it exists within our society and how it functions within our society in particular. That all being said, laugh at Matt. He's a dumb, idiot, fascist man, and he deserves to be ridiculed. So, fuck you, Matt.